Welcome to my YouTube channel, One Race, Human Race, All Human. Today is Saturday, July 31st, 2021. People need housing. The eviction moratorium ends today.
Democrats failed to pass an eviction extension, which will expire tonight. House Democrats scrambled Friday to find enough votes to extend the moratorium beyond tonight, which is the deadline. To no avail, it didn't happen. A proposed renter protection bill was also rejected. Last month, the Supreme Court allowed the extension to stay in place until July 31st. Again, that is today. But congressional action was needed to extend it. Biden called on state and local governments Friday evening to, quote, immediately disperse rental assistance funds from COVID relief aid ahead of tonight's moratorium expiration. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says renters should not have to suffer.
The fact is that almost $50 billion was allocated, $46 billion. Less than 10% of that has been spent. Around $3 billion is reported to me, but let's say it would be 10%. Why should the renters be punished for the fact that the system did not put money in their pockets to pay the rent to the landlords?
And according to data from the Center on Budget Policies and Priorities, between April and May 28th, May, 28% of Black tenants with a child in the household were behind on their rent. That was followed by Asian renters at 25% and then Latin households at 21%. And House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said it's up to the CDC to extend the moratorium, not Congress. Our very own Kelly Wrighty spoke with Doug Ryan, a low-income house.
Excuse me a second. What happened to the white renters? Everyone should be listed. There are 66 million poor or low-wealth white Americans, according to the Poor People's Campaign.org, which is co-chaired by the Reverend Dr. Bishop William J. Barber II and the Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris.
Housing expert about the impact this moratorium will have on millions of renters in Black and brown communities. Take a listen.
Give us an outlook, if you will, short-term and long-term, of what could happen when the moratorium ends on July 31st.
Yeah, and again, it's going to be very uneven, but I do think in kind of the big picture, you're going to see a lot of evictions at a much higher rate than a normal August, September, October would see, pre-pandemic. So that's one thing. And one of the saddest outcomes of evictions is its impact on children, which you noted in the opening here, is that we're starting to go back to school, and there's going to be children that are going to be disrupted. They're going to be forced to start a different school or, have different teachers, maybe not be able to register in time to start the school year in the right way. And if anything is what we need to do as a society is get kids in school and on the right foot come September. And evictions are very disruptive to families and children in school, and that's a real problem. And then, of course, the other impacts on people's jobs, their ability to find jobs, the ability to connect with services if they're disrupted. Evictions have a ripple effect through the community. And as you know, and your audience knows, is that certain communities are more heavily hit by evictions and their outcomes than other communities are. It's just the way it is. Poorer communities, communities of color, in more expensive housing markets and the like, these are the families that are going to be hurt seriously. And I think we really are going to learn a lot from this, but hopefully we can have a robust, program in the future to respond to the next crisis.
This is a very important question I'm about to ask you. What are your thoughts on funding legal services for eviction cases? Because landlords seem to be covered. Why aren't tenants covered?
That's a great question. I'm glad you raised it. So 90% of landlords going into landlord-tenant court have an attorney with them. Only about 10% of renters going into the landlord-tenant do, and that's across the country. And that is just an uneven for a confrontational relationship that is very uneven. So in New York City, Maryland, San Francisco, elsewhere, there are a right to counsel for eviction proceedings, and just like you have a right to an attorney in a criminal proceeding for 50 plus years in this country. So what we've seen in New York City, for example, in 2018, 84% of the renters who were facing eviction who were represented by counsel retain their homes. That is a huge outcome, and of course, it's not just the benefits lead to go to the family, but it also reduces costs to the jurisdiction through other services and things like that, not to mention the impact on the family, the children, and the community. So I think that's a really important point, and I hope more states start to seeing the value in that and roll that out. But I'll be clear, there's a lot of states that will simply not do that for ideological or political reasons, but I'm hoping more cities and states will do that.
And Doug, what you just talked about, ideological and political reasons, that should be banished right now because you're talking about families and their children, albeit that landlords do have a right to earn a living as well. And a lot of landlords are quite notably, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but there are some who are on the losing end as well. So how do you disaffect people or who have their ideological bents and their political bents and get them to see that if home is where the heart is, you've got to protect the home for the children and the families who are facing evictions?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that's exactly right. And, to your point about landlords, many of the affordable housing in this country that is not subsidized, that is market or naturally occurring, is provided by small so-called mom and pop landlords in communities across the country. And to your point, their margins aren't great. They are also facing huge challenges. And I worry about them as well, because they're going to be gobbled up by larger companies, and that's going to worsen the future of the affordable housing crisis. But to your point, at the end of the day, the families, the children, and the communities are going to be the ones that are most impacted. And we already saw the disproportionate impact of COVID over the last 16, 17 months. This is just going to be another fallout from the pandemic. We saw an uneven impact on economics, on job loss and wage loss. The housing loss is also going to be uneven and disparate impacts as well. And that should be a concern to all of us.
So rent relief funding approved by Congress in the last two rescue packages will continue to be distributed through states, cities, and local entities, with some states like New York and California extending their own eviction protections. If you need rental assistance, there's a searchable list of resources at the U.S. Department of Treasury. Again, that list is at the U.S. Department of Treasury, and you should also contact your legal aid for help. And going up in smoke, old marijuana laws in the state of Louisiana starting tomorrow. Possessing 14 grams or less, or better yet, a half ounce of marijuana will not get you jail time, even for repeat offenders. Now, the misdemeanor with a fine of up to $100 goes into effect again tomorrow on Sunday. And the new law, which won slim bipartisan support, comes as attitudes about pot continue to shift in the state. The new bill ends jail time for small amounts of marijuana. However, pot remains illegal for recreational use. And joining me